Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're going to be finding out what is the quickest or the fastest visual in DAX. Right? Have you ever wondered about that? That's the first thing I thought of when I got in onto this performance analyzer report and exporting the information and putting it into this report. First thing I thought of was like, if there's that much of a difference, if optimizing your DAX is really only, well, in this case, 0.2% of your report performance, right? Obviously, then the rest of it is the visual rendering and all of that sort of thing. That's where you should focus your time, optimizing your reports for speed. And so I've been learning quite a bit about this report and how it works. It's one of the worst designed reports I've ever seen in my life. We'll get into that. But Brian Julius did show me. He's like, oh, somebody else actually has thought about this, Greg. And if I can bring it up, and the person actually wrote a report analyzer, and this is the Life in Europe report that I've been using, and it shows like this is the headline insights page, so it shows all the visuals laid out and like how much time they take to render. You can go into here, and there's your metadata information. Render time is 180 milliseconds. So this is going to be cool. I'll probably be playing with this, but it's really not designed for what I was trying to do with it. But it's pretty cool. I'll probably be covering this maybe in another video or something like that, or using it as we go forward. And it's made by this guy. Well, Report Analyzer. Here's the download page, Elegant BI, and it's made by Michael Kowalski. So obviously, sorry, didn't mean to impugn you, Michael Kowalski. You're the person that has actually thought about Power BI report optimization in terms of the visual layer and that sort of thing. So good job on that. All right, so let's get into this god awful report. So I mean, it took me a while to puzzle this whole thing out, honestly, and I basically had to kind of fix it. All right, and then I created some of my own measures and stuff in order to get the information that I needed to get, right? And so the way I had to figure this out, and by the way, I had this report open. I'm like, man, it's too bad that Power BI doesn't store who the author of this thing is, so I can like give them flack about it. But luckily, we can go to GitHub where we download this report, right? And so here we are, right here, and it has a history. So here's the history. So there it is. MI77 is the person that authored this report. And that is none other than Will Thompson. Will, my man, you're killing me with this thing. He's a program manager at Power BI team at Microsoft. Dude, it is a worst report. I mean, this is like, they're putting on these contests, Microsoft is, and like, oh, accessibility and report design and, world championship. And this is the kind of garbage that they're putting out, right? In terms of what they're actually doing, right? So nobody pays for that stuff, not even Microsoft. All right, so you just get this god awful like report design that just is just terrible. Anyway, this is what you get. So I had to fix it, and and boy, Will, you know, this is no wonder why Power BI is so bad if their program managers don't even know how to use the tool, right? So here, let me show you something here. So remember how the event types would come back with like nulls, and it's like, oh no, you can't do that. You have to have, it's on the one side of a one-to-many relationship. What was causing that in the end actually was, so remember I replaced this with nuns, right? Well, what was going on here is when they were nulls, right? And this is something that Will apparently didn't understand. Um, let's see, let me get to added the column, right? So here's the code. Here's the code, right? So all he's trying to do is concatenate component with an underscore and then the name, right? The problem is when you have a null, when you concatenate a null onto a string, it becomes a null. The whole thing becomes a null, right? So apparently Will, program manager at Microsoft, didn't understand that, and that's why you were getting nulls over here, which then when the event types try to say, oh, these are my null, these are my event types, you're getting nulls in here, and that was the whole. So basically, that's why you had to replace this with the word none or something else, basically, right? You could replace it with anything other than a null, right? Nulls are bad. So that is the real reason that was going on and that was happening. So, but it's fixed now. I fixed it. Now, I was a little off in terms of some of the math, in terms of when in the last the last video I did on this subject, right? I think this was like 0.08 or 0.008 or something like that. That was a bit off, and the DSC timings and AS timings are roughly equal, right? So it's spending about the same amount of time in the data shape engine as the analysis services engine, the data engine or data model with data storage engine, whatever it is, whatever they call it in the official Microsoft documentation, but it's analysis services. That's why it's abbreviated AS. All right, so so it's still less than 1% of the report time. Now, the way to figure this out, the way I had to figure this out is, and I'll bring up the violin only port. Well, I hate that Teams, when you share with Teams, it screws up the whole everything, right? It screws up all of that stuff, which again, Microsoft, great job. All right, so anyway, what you have to pay attention to is this hierarchy here. So this is the entire visual, 53 milliseconds. Well, that includes this 26 and this 26, and see how this hierarchy, right? So if you sum up this and then this and then this and then this, it gives you a much higher number, right? You get a much bigger number than what you would normally. So you have to pay attention to this hierarchy, and that is what this metric does essentially. So the metric, and so I had to figure this out. Like the whole Life in Europe one was way too much to analyze, just too much. So basically what I did, I'm like, well, I know that I'm going to do Microsoft. I want the Life in Europe, not the Life in Europe learning. Oh, here it is. So what I did was I took my Azure map visual, which it's going to render here, or maybe it's going to crash, I don't know. But anyway, I took it and I started pasting it, right, and then switching it to every other visual type. So I did like filled map, bubble map, table, obviously waterfall chart, on and on and on. So I came up with all the different visual types, right? And then what I did was so all the standard visuals, plus I did a couple of the custom visuals because I had them there. So then what I would do is I would copy one, paste it onto this page, I'd clear everything off, and then refresh the visuals. And I did it once, for each visual. So that collected all that data, all that JSON data, and put it in a folder. And then I sucked it all in, give you a folder query, right? Put it in the same format, blah, blah, blah. Did a bunch of work. And so that's how I figured this out. And so let's see, back to violin only. So yeah, so I have this metric, right? So what it does, because here's the interesting thing. So it's not exact, because this DAX query says it's 3 milliseconds. The visual is 26.67 milliseconds, and other is 0.33 milliseconds, and that totals to 53.33. And those numbers come from here, right? So the interesting thing is this render 26.67, right? So if you go back, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do this. So I can show you. Yeah, here we go. So here's the violin, right? And here's 54 seconds, right? This is 53 and this is 53. I don't know. Maybe they just always round up, in terms of this. And then the DAX query, they say is 2 seconds, but it really was 3.33 seconds. You can see it right here, right? And then the visual display was 28 seconds. This visual is 26.67. And then the other is 23.33, which is 24. So, and you can see here, this says this query. Here's the query, 26.67. And then here is everything that's contained in that query. And there's only 3.33 milliseconds that have been used. Where's the other 23 milliseconds? 0.33 milliseconds. Where'd it go? So I basically was like, well, it must be other. And so that's what I did with it. So this visual is this render line here, right? And then the other is this portion, and also if it's anything resolved name parameters, there's a few other hierarchy items that go into that, right? So I classified all that as other, right? And then the DAX query is this DAX query, right? That's the DAX query time. So then the total is then the combination of those three elements, right? And I broke query time into DES time and AS time just because I was interested. In normal operation, it's kind of equal. Although in this case, you can see all the time was spent in the DSE timing versus the AS, probably because of some caching and things like that going on in the report, whatever it is. Anyway, puzzled it out. Okay. Then what I did was I created, so yeah, I mean, if you want any more information on all of this, but yeah, here's the metric. So DAX query is the execute semantic query, right? AS time is the execute query. DES time is execute DAX query. Visual is the render piece, right? The other is basically I sum up the entire visual container lifecycle, you know, and then or I just grab the visual container lifecycle, and then I subtract the DAX query and the visual, right? And that becomes the other. So there you have it. And the total is obviously the combination of other plus visual plus DAX query. So there you go. That is the analysis. Took me a while to puzzle through it all, but then I could come up with this. Well, maybe, nope, it's not going to do it because Teams sucks. All right, so then I was able to come up with this query, with this report. And this is what I did was I transformed data. Yeah. So I created a folder query, right? And then I sucked all of them in. So all the files in. So 100% bar chart, you know, 100% column chart. Here they all the different visuals and all of their timings. And so therefore, now we can do the drum roll, and I can show you the fastest visuals in DAX, or Power BI. I keep saying fastest visuals in DAX. Fastest visuals in Power BI, and I never would have guessed it's key influencers and QA. They take it once they render, it somehow stores that configuration within the visual or something. It literally takes 0 time to render it once it's been rendered, right? Once you put the stuff in the key influencers and it goes, it computes it, and it's the same way with QA. Once it analyzes it, it takes 0 time to render it. But I mean, in terms of some things, was like, I would have thought the card visual would actually be the fastest, and it is. But the new card visual is one of the slowest. Right? So good job, Miguel and team. You guys managed to take the new card visual and make it 3 times less 3 times more expensive to run than the old card visual. So I don't know if that's an improvement or not. But the most, and this again surprised me. I don't know why, but the narrative visual takes the longest amount of time. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, smart narrative, and it figures it out. And then, but why is it rerunning the analysis every time? I don't know what it's doing, but it's the most expensive visual. So don't use smart narratives, man. They're bad. Now I need to actually test out, like, well, does a text, I have to, text visual, if I just put the same information that's in this smart narrative visual, if I just put it into a text box, then is that just as bad, right? Is a text box the most expensive visual in DAX? I don't know. Got to test it out, folks. There's all kinds of, this is just the beginning, people. And some other interesting things. Filled map visual is much more. Where's my bubble map? Bubble map. It's actually like twice as expensive to do a filled map versus a bubble map. Didn't know that, right? So here you have it. If you're not thinking this way about your report performance and report optimization, then you're a hack, right? Right? Because this is what's going to impact your report performance the most, not your DAX. The DAX is like even in this case scenario, it's 5%, right? So there you have it, man. I mean, there's just, why would you optimize 5% of your report when you could be optimizing 95%, the other 95% of your report, right? And this is how you can do it. So this is key influencers and QA, the fastest visuals in Power BI, and then the card visual. So I'll probably also do some stuff where I come up with the multipliers for all of this. And this, I can tell you right now, this is a little bit ahead. I've been doing additional testing, and this is kind of a little bit ahead. But like, yeah, man, if you're in a text table, you're in a table visual, conditional formatting is far less expensive than the little line chart, right? The little spark line, right? Spark lines are expensive with tables versus conditional formatting is almost like no cost, basically. So I'm going to be doing way more on this, but this was the first goal, was to come up with this chart. And this is, ranked from lowest to highest, the most expensive visuals in Power BI. There you have it. So that is all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.